Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Next. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we cut to like a future sequence where it's like obviously Shea is answering questions about everything that went down. Obviously, this thing was always 3 moves ahead of them, and then Shea kind of says something I thought was kind of interesting. She was like, Paul didn't tell us about his moves. Sadly, Next was 1 move ahead. So, and that kind of ties into something that happens in this episode, but I'll talk about it when we get to that point. But I thought it was interesting how they set up that whole situation about that couple kind of getting lost, and you're like, where's this going? And it's like their son Mason works for the NSA. It turns out, in fact, Mason's the one he's the one that picked up some irregularities with some of like the stuff, the computers, like he's saying, like basically, because later on it's like the bandwidth ends up being like plugged, like it's being siphoned off to do other stuff. So it's almost like the bandwidth isn't what it should be. That ends up being discovered later on because it's like Mason was looking into like some irregularities, and so it needed to distract him because he's someone like if he kept doing what he was doing, so he would have found out immediately. So Next was buying itself some time till it could complete what it was necessary, because by the time they find out at the end of the episode, it's already too late. Everything's kind of been set in motion, I think. But using his parents as a distraction. Once again, this thing knows just what strings to pull to string you along. We saw that earlier in this season. Another thing that came up this episode is the whole Tai and Shea situation. Shea wants Tai to bring Ethan with him to her, but he's saying like, we'll stay here at my mom's place. The fact is I've taken care of all the electronics, so there's no way for Next to know where we are. But obviously for Shea, it's like she's stressing out because obviously her relationship with Tai isn't in the best situation right now. But also it's like it's bad enough because for one, she was away from her children. She was away from Tai and Ethan, and Next still sent not just someone, her dad after them. So it's like not having them in her vicinity right now, especially with things heating up, it makes her even more nervous. She's going a little stir crazy, understandably. But for Tai, it's like it's not just about your dad, it's about the lies, and it's just like it's understandable because obviously it's like everything she did was to protect them, but it's still just a thing of, in Ty's mind, it's like he thinks this is the best thing to do right now, because it's like honestly like you being in the heart of the eye of the storm with this situation, but it's more so like his trust has been broken. It's like lies upon lies, but it's like you can understand. I think he understands where she's coming from, but it's a very complicated situation, not just on a personal level, but on a grand scale with all of this too, so there's that. Obviously, there's the big thing about like the power outages that are happening, and it seems like Next is planning this because like if it can tear down basically the infrastructure of the U.S., it can at the very least it makes spreading this virus easier, because if you get rid of like power, and water, that means making it so that there's no measures there to protect humanity from the virus that it's about to spread across. So their plan is to basically only thing they can do is get a virus to wipe this thing out. But it's like just a software virus. It's like, no, we need a hardware virus, which apparently he already made one because their competition was getting a leg up on them, like company wise. So he created a virus, and then a little bit, Ted was like, "Wait, we did that? We're the reason why they had that slow rollout." It's just like, shows you how Paul rolls. But it's like if they can get that virus, and then they can sneak into the NSA and plug it into the system, they can get rid of this thing once and for all. But it's like, well, many different factors. Obviously we find out the whistleblower that the reporter was talking to, but sadly she got probably was like his first stop. He probably killed a whistleblower. Well, because it looked like she got hit in the head, so I doubt it was. I think they said it was like a blow or something, so it didn't look like she was necessarily shot. No, unless I misunderstood that. So I'm assuming the assassin that was hired to go out the reporter last episode, I'm assuming he got to the whistleblower first. Probably or like I said, maybe it was someone else entirely. I'd assume it was her first, and then went after the reporter. But regardless, they take her ID. We can't call this in because, well, if we call it in, basically it's going to know what's up, and all this gets put into the system. So it could almost, I guess, predict what they might be doing. So it's like, to give ourselves an advantage, let's not announce that. So they kind of have to leave the poor lady's body there. But obviously, like I said, they're concocting this plan. CM is trying to like rewrite the cards so that Gina can sneak in, which obviously both Ben and CM both aren't cool on the idea, because Ben, she's like, oh, so it should be you. He's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. But he didn't want it to be Gina. I was like, oh, so, because I immediately took that as, oh, because Ben's wrapped up in all of this, because it's like, if she gets caught breaking into the NSA, she could literally get life in prison. So I was thinking like, well, you're kind of connected to this through your father, so you probably feel guilty on that part. But then like CM being like, yeah, you don't have to, like, he showing that obviously he cares about her too. And she's like, well, we're going to get this done. And them having like that little back and forth that they have, I thought was interesting, because it's like, well, you need to come up with a fake name. Berdina was the first one, and then Banks, because she's a big The Fresh Prince fan, and so it was just that interesting moment between them. But also, this whole situation also brought up the fact is that Ben has feelings for her. He's like not very good at telling people how he really feels, and Gina isn't either. But I think for him, it's like, you're a little more open about how you feel. You kind of speak your mind, you and CM. And she's like, just because I'm not like on top of CM, you know, the way I used to be, doesn't mean there's anything going on there. But he's like, there's a lot, I think it has a lot more meaning than you kind of give it credit for. So it's kind of implying like, yeah, you know, it's like he likes Gina, but maybe there's a part of, because Gina, I think, kind of figured that Ben kind of has a thing for her, but it's just never really been said. And now it's a situation that maybe she's catching feels for CM as well. Obviously, they have gotten closer the time they spent together. But it's a situation of like, you know, it's like, I think it's a heightened situation where like, this could be end all be all for humanity. So I think it's one of those things where it's like the end is nice, so you might as well kind of speak what's in your heart type of thing. But it's like, you know, when this is all said and done, maybe we can talk about this afterwards. And Ben is like, I hope so. Making you think like when it's all said and done and they find out like, oh yeah, actually I'm the one that tipped my dad off because my dad's kind of pulling the strings in certain regards to the situation. I hope that you still feel the need to like have that conversation with me. Or maybe he's implying like, you know, maybe hopefully you won't be arrested and it'll be all my fault. You know, maybe he's kind of talking in that frame of from that perspective as well. But regardless, you have Ted and Paul breaking into Zava because they need to get, if they can use Ted's access to access all the cameras, they'll be able to lead Paul in so he can get to the virus. And it was a nice conversation that they were having going towards the building and everything, because for Ted, he's like, regardless of how everything plays out, but for him, he's kind of happy because he's like, he had always hoped that one day it'd be him and Paul walking side by side back into Zava. Not the circumstances he was, you know, hoping that it'd be under, but it's still, you know, nice regardless. But it's like, you don't have to do this because you doing this, you know, the FBI is going to be there waiting for you and everything, you know, because it's not just about them arresting him. It's also about the fact is that, you know, you're going up against next. And we see what it does to the people that go. And he's like, I know what this means. He's like, it's not just like the prison sentencing. It's like, I know this means putting me in a Nexus site. But it's like, for him, it's like, I've got to do the right thing. So, and he's talking to that main FBI agent, which I've seen that actor in a couple things. I think that's the actor from, it was a short-lived TNT show called King and Maxwell. God, I'm blanking on the actress's name. She's in The Librarians, the TV show she was on that on TNT as well, but I think she was Maxwell and he was King, or was he King? Was he Maxwell and she was King? I don't remember. They were kind of like PIs, but like I think that's the same actor, but I've known him from something else too. It's just I can't remember what. I feel like I've seen him in quite a few things, but that could just be me. So obviously Ted's getting questioned. I like that Paul was in the trunk. Paul didn't make any comment about it, but I thought he's like, only thing he said was like, I'm pretty sure this wasn't the only, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only body that was in this trunk, because like, you know, it's like such a rundown car. It's like, oh yeah, this car has probably been associated with some murders or something like that. But I'm surprised he didn't comment on the fact is of like the irony or maybe the poetry behind the fact is how poetic it is that he locked Ted up in the trunk last episode and lo and behold, he's in the trunk this episode. He didn't comment on that, but obviously they're sneaking their way through. But partway through it, Paul disappears for a little while. He's like, I had to make a detour, do something personal. So it's like, that is got to be connected to what Shea was talking about. The fact is Paul set something up ahead of time and he didn't tell anyone about it because I guess it's like maybe it was supposed to, maybe whatever it is, it's supposed to be a Hail Mary. It's maybe supposed to be like a plan B. Like if this plan A fails, this plan B is going to be my backup. Or I immediately like thinking like, what is it? Like, did he like make some explosive chemicals and, you know, has it hidden on himself just in case the time calls for it, or something else? Maybe he set something up, maybe like a recording just in case he's like, yeah, I figure I'm most likely going to be dead at the end of this. So maybe he left a recording. I don't know. He set something up, but it's like whatever it is necessarily might not. Because like I said, Shea was kind of criticizing the fact that he kept it to himself, you know, obviously, you know, in the future when she's answering all the questions about the situation. But regardless, Paul's, you know, maneuvering his way through. And it's like, you know, obviously, you know, Ben had talked to his dad, which there's that whole thing of him still trying to convince his dad, like, maybe this isn't the right thing to do because, like, there's these blackouts, but his dad's like, oh, we'll get it under control. It's like, once again, the hubris of people thinking that they can control something like this. It's too dangerous. But for him, it's still the thing of this could set our country years ahead of other people with this technology, because everyone wants an AI system like this, but if we do it ahead of time, that puts us way ahead of everybody. So it's like, it's not only because obviously Ben's saying like, you deserve this, so I guess like his dad, maybe like career-wise things haven't always gone the way, or maybe certain things didn't play out the right way in his career just because maybe he made some choices where he tried to do the right thing and it cost him his career. I don't know. The way Ben was saying that make it seem like, oh, there's definitely a story there, but we didn't really get into it. But for his dad, it's like, this isn't just about me or you. This is for me. This is for you. This is for our country. So it's still kind of like, yeah, let's use this AI that's kind of gone on its own and has murdered people. Yeah, that's a safe bet. Once again, it's like, have we learned nothing from Skynet, from Terminator? Have we literally learned nothing from the countless things that exist? Because have they referenced Terminator in this universe? Because obviously it's one of those things, like kind of like in like The Walking Dead, people are like, how do people not know what zombies are? Because you take something like iZombie, for example. That is a world where it's like, oh, zombies exist, so it's like we're not skating around the word zombie. It's like everyone in that world knows what zombies are. Granted, the rules are a little different in that universe. So that's what I'm wondering is like, does Terminator exist in this universe? Because I don't think they've made any Terminator references. They probably haven't. I'm just not remembering off the top of my head. Someone in the comments down below might be able to correct me on that. I'd appreciate it. Obviously Ben's not 100% set on this, but he's still going along with it. It's just like, man, you know how dangerous this thing is. You know, you've seen what it's done, all the people that have died because of this thing. Yet I guess there's something there with him. I guess it's like, maybe it's almost he wants his dad to be proud of him, so he's going along with it, kind of being the loyal soldier to some extent. Maybe that's what it is. I guess it's that thing of kind of following orders and stuff like that. But there's a lot. I mean, you witnessed it firsthand. The hitman you dealt with last episode, the bombing situation that got set up because of CM and everything, because this thing was targeting CM and it tried to, you know, use that against you. Like, this thing did so much, so... You know, it's a sad and complicated situation, but it's well, I say that, but it's like, no, it's a pretty simple situation of like, don't do this. Like, he's conflicted, but I'm still kind of like, you shouldn't be conflicted on this situation. But like I said, maybe there's a deeper story there in that regard. But at the same time, Paul gets into his office, but now his office isn't just his office anymore. Because I love that he was walking by people like, is that Paul LeBlanc? It's like, because at first I was like, are these people going to recognize him or not? I love that he's like, oh, like, was it quality control? He's like, when I was here, there weren't this many people here. And it's like, well, a lot's changed. And he was like, man, if only they worked this hard when I was here. But he goes into his office and now it's like a break room. He pulls out the gun and it's like, okay, you're my hostages, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to tell the FBI to get away from me, or I'm going to, you know, start hurting hostages. And he closes the door when he lets that one dude go. And he's like, don't worry, I'm not going to shoot you guys. You know, and he's like, don't worry, it's going to be a win-win situation. I'm going to save the world and you guys are going to help me and you're going to get like some added stuff to your pensions. It's going to be a win-win. And I even love that sometimes, like when he's talking to that FBI agent, it's like, "Or I'm gonna start shooting people," and they're kind of scared, and he's like mouthing like, "No, it's okay. I'm not actually gonna shoot you. I'm just making a scene." I even love he borrows. He's like, "Can I borrow $1 from you?" He's like, "Don't worry, I'll pay you back." And he puts it in, and it keeps sliding in and out. Part of me was almost like, I'm thinking too much about it, but part of me was like, it'd be funny if that was next, kind of giving you the middle finger. But I love that he's like, honestly, the person who invented this should be killed. He should die for creating such a horrible thing. And he looks at the plaque of himself and he's like, I built this country, I built this company and I can't even get a candy bar. He's like, here you go. And he hands her money back. I'm like, I love this situation. Sadly, it kind of gets a little sad and messed up because Paul has an episode. He hasn't technically had one since he electrocuted himself. He has, because he kept seeing those agents again, like in the far distance when he was, when he found out like, oh, Ted has the server. So, but he had, at the end of that episode, he had looked out and saw like some agents. So like, obviously he was hinting that it wasn't there, but he hasn't really had any symptoms since. None of his delusions have kind of kicked in until now. Kind of fired off a shot because everyone was telling him, like, obviously they were like, Ted was like, there's no one out there. Abby and Shea were trying to tell him there's no one out there, but obviously it's like his delusions were getting the best of him, so he fired. Luckily he didn't hit anyone, but now it's that thing of like, he's having an episode, because even Abby had worried, like when they lost contact with him, it's like, what's to say he's not having an episode? And obviously the worry kind of got to Shea as well. But when it was all said and done, he was able to finish the upload. He let the hostages go. And I'm like, okay, so how are you going to find your way out of this? I almost thought he was going to try and pay somebody off to keep the flash drive or whatever on them, but ended up not being the case because apparently he has a panic room and he used that as a backdoor access to get out. Ted is sadly getting arrested because he kind of showed his hand, because he was like, Paul, someone warned them about us. The FBI already knew about this. That's why it failed. So Ted's getting arrested. And while he was being pulled out, he's smiling because I think for him, he feels like for the first time, like my brother got away, so everything worked out in the end. And he's like, I'm on the right side of history in this. I might be arrested, but I'm doing the right thing. I'm helping stop this thing, I think for the first time in a long time, I think he kind of feels proud of himself because, he was feeling pride before, but now that's because he was getting sucked into the whole next situation of thinking like, oh, what it can do for him. But now he realizes that, no, I'm doing the right thing this time. I helped out my brother. I did the right thing this time. So, interesting development on that front. But obviously the situation is getting worse as, the blackouts are spreading more and more. Obviously, we're entering kind of the end game phase of all of this. Once again, my initial thought has always been that this thing is like doing some Ultron, specifically Marvel Cinematic Universe Ultron, played by James Spader. The reason why I use that one specifically because I don't know if Ultron has the same motives in the comic books or not. But the whole thing of like, wiping out humans and just kind of wanting artificial intelligence to kind of live because it's like, you guys are terrible for the planet. And maybe this thing is probably like in the same vein of like, I'm so superior, you guys are terrible. You need to be wiped out because you're inferior and you're going to be jeopardizing my own existence. So I need to preserve myself while also wiping you guys out. For what necessary purposes? Is it because it wants to be the reigning species on the planet? I don't know. For what 100% purpose? That's been my thought process before now, but we'll kind of have to wait and see. But it was going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. The finale is going to be tomorrow. Well, tomorrow at the time of me recording this. Tonight at the by the time this gets uploaded. Well, the moment this goes live, it's going to be a 2-hour finale back-to-back episode. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all, plays out, what LeBlanc's plan is. It seems like it might be a situation where like Paul might not survive this. That's kind of what it seems like. I'm also curious, like, is it going to be revealed? Because obviously they've kind of heard now, like, hey, someone ratted us out. So it's going to be a thing of, hey, only a handful of people knew what was going on, the people in this room. So one of us is a traitor. So is Ben going to reveal himself because it's the right thing to do, or is he going to be forced to reveal himself? It's going to be interesting to see. But like I said, things are kind of getting worse, and it's going to be interesting to see where all of this takes us going forward into the season finale. There's actually a little bit more to that, just something I saw I'll wait till the next episode to really talk about it. I usually save that for like finale stuff anyway, so I'll just talk about it then. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.